Welcome to Dawn of the New Earth. Today we are talking about an incredibly important subject, how to unlock your higher self, how to connect to your inner self, which in the Neogenian system we call the inner star, how to connect to your true self, your inner star. So we are continuing our discussion on inner alchemy. This is step number 6, known as distillation, which is all about connecting to your true self, who and what you actually are. So this is what we're going to be discussing today. And I thought it was appropriate today. The shirt that I am wearing is the Star Tarot card. So just a little homage. And so we're going to get started right away. But as always, hey, if you're not a member yet on my channel, why not become a member? And you're going to get access to all of my alchemy downloads for free. These are downloads on inner transformation and powerful notes on all the different aspects of alchemy that we talk about here on this channel. There are 9 of them out right now. I'm going to make one for this video and every video. And when you become a member, you can get all those for free. Now, if you just want to purchase them outright, you can. I put a link in the description where you can just purchase them. But it's a much better deal to become a member, and you're going to get a lot more in the future as well. And you can get other stuff like members only videos, and just hit the join button and see what the different tiers are. Let's see. Also, make sure that you check out my book, Psychogenesis, Self and Universal Transformation. If you like what we discuss here in these alchemy streams, this book goes into extreme detail on that and way more, including reaching higher levels of consciousness, as well as manifesting your will into reality in will forming. So there's inner star actualization, hyper awareness, and will forming. Now, just to be clear, though, I want to make it clear, this book does not use the symbolism or the words of alchemy. It's purely in psychological terms. It's the same topic, but it's put in terms of psychology rather than using the symbolism of alchemy. So just so you know, highly recommend, if you like what we talk about here, I highly recommend this. Link is in the description. And as well, my Spotify channel is there as well in the description. So follow me on Spotify. All right, so let's get started. We are talking about step number 6. What is step number 6 in inner alchemy? This is the step of distillation, and it's all about connecting to your higher self. Now, once again, if some of this sounds a little confusing at first, just go with it, and it'll start to make sense as we go along. And for those who might be new, remember, why are we doing this in the first place? Why are we talking about alchemy? Because alchemy is not literally true. It's not about turning metal into gold. It's a metaphor or allegory or set of symbols for transforming yourself from lower states to higher states. And the symbolism in alchemy creates a language that allows you to communicate this process with your unconscious mind, because your unconscious does not communicate in words, it communicates through symbolism. And so what we're doing here is we're unifying the process of inner transformation, both consciously and unconsciously. We're unconsciously communicating the process with our subconscious and our unconscious, so that we are working in alignment with our consciousness that is then putting in the work to do it as well. So you're not just using a left foot or a right foot, you're using both feet, which is going to give you a lot more progress than just trying to do one or the other. So that's what this is about. Okay. So what is distillation? This is the step that we're talking about right now. Step number 6, distillation. So in physical alchemy, distillation is the process of heating up a substance. Let's see, let me check my notes here. So it's about heating up a substance until it vaporizes and then cooling it back down so that it condenses back into a purified liquid form. And so what's left behind is the impure residue, while the pure essence is separated and refined. Okay? So in inner alchemy, this, metaphorically speaking, this is what we're doing. But with regard to consciousness, we're allowing the heat to raise up our spiritual aspect and then condense back in a purified form. Now, the important part to understand about distillation in terms of inner alchemy is that it's not a single moment. It's not a singular step. It's something that occurs again and again. It's a continuous process of refinement. And what this is about is undoing things that hold us back and integrating that which moves us forward in this process that will allow our inner star to shine through. So how is this different than the other processes? So remember, we've gone through 5 steps so far. The first step of calcination was burning away false beliefs and ideas and negative thought patterns. Dissolution was about going down into the dark depths of the unconscious and confronting our shadow self and having emotional releases from things within our unconscious mind. Did I say I hope I said dissolution. Dissolution, not distillation, dissolution. Step number 3 was separation, which is about how we integrate the shadow self. Step 4 was conjunction, which is about unifying our inner opposites. And step 5, which we talked about last week, was about putrefaction and fermentation, which is continuing to get rid of things holding us back while accessing our power self. All right. So this step is the 6th step. It's the next step. And okay, so essentially this is how this process works. To kind of put it simply, and there's a lot more to it, so I'll break this down, but to put it simply, this step is less about searching and more about becoming. So you've noticed in previous steps, there's a lot of searching that has to be done. Like, oh, what is my shadow self? What is my mirror self? What is my power self? Or, what false beliefs are limiting me, etc. There's a lot of searching and discovering, which is great. And there's some of that in this step as well. But it's more about becoming. It's more about the transformation that will occur because of what we've been doing. Hopefully that makes sense. And I'll go into more detail as we go on. But it's essentially the idea that as we let go continuously of what is holding us back, as well as integrating our shadow self and our mirror self and our power self, the inner star, your true self, your higher self will begin to actualize because you are eliminating what is blocking it and you are integrating what allows it to shine through. So you have to get rid of what blocks it, and then you have to integrate that which allows the inner star to shine through. Because the inner star is the whole you, the entirety of you. It's not one aspect. It's not your persona. It's not your ego. It's not your shadow self. It's not your mirror self. It's not your power self. It's all of those things. Your mirror self, your power self, your shadow self, your ego, your persona. It's all of those things. And so for the inner star to actualize, for your true self to come through, is making sure that all of those drives are integrated such that they are working together to achieve your unified will, working together in a unified and integrated way. So let's start to break this down. So in this process, the planet that symbolizes this process is the moon. That glare, I don't like that glare. Let me take this out here. Is symbolized by the moon. Now, why is it symbolized by the moon? Well, what does the moon represent? Remember, the moon has nothing to do with the actual moon up in the sky. What the moon is a representation of an archetypal pattern. It symbolizes archetypal patterns. So what does the moon symbolize? It symbolizes the unconscious mind, cycles, and intuition. There are other things that the moon symbolizes as well, like dreams, etc. But mostly what we're focusing on for our purposes, the important aspects are that it represents the unconscious, cycles, and intuition. It represents the unconscious because the moon is in the sky at night. So it's the moon is in the dark realm. So it represents being in the unconscious. It represents intuition because it's not just in the dark room, but it's also the dark realm, but it's what gives light to the dark realm. It is the light in the night sky that illuminates the dark realm. So that's our intuition. And it also represents cycles because the moon goes through a lot of cycles. And so it's this process that occurs again and again, like in distillation. And so in distillation, it's a process that's happening again and again. It deals with bringing our unconscious to light, bringing our unconscious into conscious awareness, and our intuition helps that process as well. Now, we're going to be doing a lot more than just intuition, of course, but it certainly helps. This part is really about allowing the inner star to come through. And these stars right now in the phase that we're in right now, this is the star in the night sky. The star in the night sky, okay? And so that's what we can think of it as we connect to our inner star. This is the star in the night sky. And so the metal associated with this stage of distillation is silver. So in alchemy, the symbol that is so in alchemy, the planets are the symbols for the metal. So in alchemy, literally the moon is the symbol for metal. In alchemy is the symbol for silver in alchemy. Moon is the symbol of silver in alchemy. Now, why is silver associated with this step? Well, silver, it's the metal of the moon, according to alchemy. But what's really interesting about silver is that it's very well known for two things. One, purity, and two, conductivity. So remember in the phase number 4, which was conjunction, which was about uniting our inner opposite, our mirror self. It was represented by copper because copper is the second most conductive metal. So it represents conduction. It represents connection. Silver is the most conductive metal that there is. And so it represents connection to an extreme degree. So we are connecting through the conductivity of silver to our higher self, to our true self. And silver is also fairly pure, and it doesn't rust or corrode easily, symbolizing its strength. But it's not it's still somewhat soft. It's not extremely hard like lead or something like that. And so it's still adaptable. Now, what's also interesting about silver is that mirrors are made of silver. Silver, not only is silver, I really like, I don't even know if you guys can see this on the camera, if it does it justice, but it is extremely reflective. So not only is it the most conductive metal, but it is the most reflective metal as well. And a lot of mirrors are made from silver. And so this represents the idea that it allows us to see with clarity our true self, our true reflection, what we actually are. So we have sight, true sight of what we are, conductivity to our true self in this highly conductive and reflective substance of silver. So that is the metal. So we have the planet and the metal. And what about the element? We usually associate an element, but remember, this stage is the 5th element of spirit. And the last 3 stages are all going to be spirit. The first 4 were associated with, fire, water, air, and earth. Then the next stage was associated with spirit, the hidden 5th element. And same with all of these final steps are associated with spirit. Okay. So this just means that we're beginning to connect to our true self. That's what that means. Our spiritual self, our divine self. The other phases were like doing the work to get up to there. And now that is where we are. And so even though this particular stage does not use or is the element of spirit, remember, in this higher domain, we're working with the primes, okay? So we're working with the primes, and the primes are, oh, right, you can't, hold on. The primes are salt, mercury, and sulfur. These are the 3 primes. But remember, in this stage, we're not really working with salt in this phase. We're focusing right now on mercury and sulfur, and we were working on mercury and sulfur in the previous stage as well. So in the previous stage, we were working with mercury and sulfur, and the goal in these stages is to merge mercury and sulfur together. That is the goal in these stages. And we talked a little bit about that in the last phase by accessing our power self. Now we're doing it even more so to access our higher self. And so remember, Mercury essentially represents the soul or mind, and sulfur represents spirit. And what I mean by that is that this is the aspect that has to do with your thoughts, your imagination. And we can understand this by remembering that Mercury is composed of 2 elements, the element of air and the element of water. The element of air and the, oh, that's fire. No, that I thought it was turned upside down. That's air. The element of air and the element of water. And so you can really think of, remember, air represents your intellect, and water represents the unconscious intuition and emotions. So really, air is left brain and water is right brain. So Mercury is the mind, is the soul, in the terms of it has both left brain and right brain functions. Okay? Now, that's what Mercury represents. It's essentially the soul, which essentially means it's the mind, the imagination, thoughts. Sulfur is your inner will and drive towards higher states of consciousness, towards what one could call spirituality, but higher states of consciousness, higher states of mind, higher states of being. That is what sulfur represents, our will towards higher states of consciousness. And it is composed of fire and air. So sulfur is composed of fire and air. Remember, air is intellect and fire is passion, will, and drive. So it is the drive, sulfur is the drive and will and passion towards higher states of mind. So the idea of unifying Mercury with sulfur is about directing, getting the mind so that it's working with and driven towards higher states of consciousness. Because if you just have the mind, you could be driven to bullshit, like just watching Netflix all day on TV or something. Combining sulfur with Mercury means having the mind working towards the goal that Mercury represents, higher states of consciousness. And as you can see, the reason why that Mercury and sulfur can be combined is because they share this element of air. So they have a connective, they can connect because they have an element that they share in common, which is air. And so fire is typically considered masculine. It has 2 masculine elements. Mercury is typically considered androgynous. Some people consider it feminine, but I think it makes much more sense to consider androgynous because it has a masculine element and a feminine element within it. So I think it makes much more sense to consider it to be androgynous. So we talked about that last time, but I just wanted to bring up a reminder. And here, this is actually sulfur, if you can see that. Does that show? Yeah, it shows better, I guess, like this. Sulfur. And sulfur is highly flammable, by the way. It's very easily flammable. That's why sulfur is it's fire and air, essentially. That's why sulfur represents that. And then mercury is, of course, represented by mercury, which it's a very, see that drop in there? That's not a bead, it's liquid. It is the only metal that is liquefiable or in the liquid state at room temperature. And so it represents its malleability. And so these are the primes that we're working with. Now notice we're not working with salt yet. Salt doesn't come in until the next phase. Right now we're just working on these two. Okay? So we talked a little bit about that last time, but we're still in the phase of combining those two together. First, we kind of started the process by tapping into our power self. And now we are continuously, this stage of actualizing the higher self is still represented by combining these two primes together. Our passion, our divine fire, motivating our mind, our soul towards higher states of consciousness. So, once again, to reiterate here, what this process of distillation is about, because remember, it's about the continuous, so each step before, you had getting rid of false beliefs, you had integrating shadow self, integrating mirror self, integrating power self. These were each separate steps. This step is about the process of continuously doing that, integrating all aspects of yourself. So you're constantly doing this. And the more that you do this, the more that you integrate those aspects of yourself into consciousness and eliminate impurities or barriers, the more that you go in this process of distillation again and again, the more and more your higher self, your true self, your inner star is going to begin to shine through. Because the higher self, the inner star, is the result of this process coming to fruition. It is the fruit. And so I'll explain this in a bit more detail, but before I do, one thing that I want to mention again is that, because I choose a tarot card, and appropriately, the star is the tarot card that we associate with this step, because it, of course, represents the inner star. And like I said before, remember that this is the light in the sky, but it's the light in the sky at night, because the reason why it's at the light in the sky at night, the next step is going to be different, where we shine our light across the world. This step, though, is not about shining our light across the world. It's about going inside to find our light and starting the process of having it come through. That's why it's the light at night, the light in darkness, the inner star that shines at night. It's not yet illuminating the world. We'll get to that next. Right now, it's about connecting to it. That's why it's the star that shines in the night. So the star, what it typically represents in tarot is renewal, clarity, and divine connection. So it's great about renewal because we are being renewed, we are being transformed, we are getting clarity of our true self and connecting to divinity. The star is about hope, insight, light, and it's also the calm after the storm. It's we've gone through a lot of chaotic aspects like calcination and dissolution and putrefaction. And this is about achieving clarity, achieving that true connection that's going to emerge from all those processes. Now, you'll notice that, hey, she's not wearing any clothes. She's naked. What's up with that? How come? Well, this represents openness and authenticity. Nothing is hidden. The true self is being displayed. And what you could even think of here is you could even think of the star as like being the soul or the zeta, not the soul in terms of like Mercury, but like your true self, your higher self, your eternal self, you're the zeta. And this is sort of like the avatar down here. It's not exactly, but it's kind of helpful. It's kind of a helpful a visual, So anyway, she is the nude aspect of her represents openness, authenticity, nothing that's hidden anymore. Everything that is false, that is not you, has been taken off and removed. So this, and then the star is the higher self. The star is the inner star. It's what we are discovering here in the peaceful serenity of the night. And it's the phase where everything starts to click into place. And the pouring the water into water and pouring the water onto earth represents balance. So it's about balance, authenticity, our higher self coming together in terms of clarity. So this is really the step is really a lot about the step where things start to fall into place. So think of it a bit like that. We have all the pieces. We have the ego, we have the shadow self, we have the mirror self, we have the power self. This is like when all of those start fitting into place to form the big picture of who you are. Now, remember, again, this is not a linear process. And so, especially like with your power self, the more that you connect, the power self is your purpose. And so the more that you connect with your higher self, that purpose might become more refined, and more clear. So remember, this isn't a strict linear process. Your purpose can emerge as you begin to understand yourself better, reach higher states of consciousness, and understand reality better. So dissolution is the process of becoming who you already are through this cycle of refining and purifying and integrating and these aspects of ourselves. Now, I want to read a little bit. I'm going to read a couple portions from my book, Psychogenesis, because it discusses the inner star, just so you can get a better idea of what it is that's happening here and what we're talking about. So let me read from this, and then we'll discuss an exercise that you can do as well. So once you begin to integrate and harmonize your inner selves into consciousness, your inner selves being your shadow self, your mirror self, your power self, all that. The more that you begin to integrate those into consciousness, the inner star will begin to actualize. Remember, you are not your power self. Neither are you your shadow self or your mirror self or your ego or your persona. Your true self is the inner star, which is all of these synthesized, harmonized, and brought into consciousness. Think of it like you're creating a pathway, you're creating a gateway. Integrating the inner star is about bringing your shadow, mirror, and power selves into a harmonious relationship with each other. You see the difference here? It's not just the before we focus on the shadow, then we focus on the mirror, then we focus on the power self. This is about making sure that they are all harmonized and working together. See, there's a very important difference. How can you get your power self, your mirror self, your shadow self, your ego, your persona, all of these aspects of you working together in unison and in harmony? As you explore, you'll find that integration happens in different stages and layers. You will uncover and integrate parts of your shadow, mirror, and power selves gradually, each revealing more about your true self. This is a process, like the moon that has phases. The more that you integrate your shadow self, power self, and mirror self, your shadow self, mirror self, and power self, you'll gradually, you're revealing more and more about your true self. And so this process is a dynamic and not a strict step-by-step progression. This means the journey of inner star actualization. That's essentially the Neogenian term for our process. That's essentially the alchemical process, but in the language of psychogenesis is inner star actualization, actualizing your inner star. It involves constant interplay and balance between all these selves. As you integrate aspects of one, it informs and influences how you engage with the others. In short, actualization of the inner star is a process that results from the integration, harmonization, and synthesis of all your selves. So, how do we do this? Let's talk about how it's practically done, and then we can talk about an exercise as well. So how it's practically done, there's not an easy answer here. how it's done, because I don't know you. I don't know the contents of your particular shadow self or mirror self or power self. I don't know. Though each one of us has a shadow self, a mirror self, and a power self. They express themselves in different ways in each of us. It's unique to each of us. Technically, this is called a complex. When an archetype is expressed in the personal unconscious in a unique way, it's called a complex. Complexes are not necessarily bad. They're neither good nor bad. They're just functions of the personal unconscious that has an archetype at its core. And so anyway, each one of us is different. So I can't tell you exactly what to do, because it's up to you to do it. But the process is to go back and see the steps of the other, how to integrate the shadow self, how to integrate the mirror self, how to integrate the power self, and to not just integrate them on their own, but making sure that they're working together in harmony. So I'll give you an example. Let's say your shadow self, you're angry person. Let's say your power self is you want to create change in the world. That's your purpose. You see inequity, you see injustice, you want to create change in the world. Well, how you can align these two together is by, let's say, channeling your anger into something productive and using it as fuel to engage in activities that would help your true will of your power self, such as engaging in peaceful protests or creating art and music, maybe like aggressive music, death metal band or something that allows you to accomplish your goal. So do you see how you're beginning to have everything aligned and unite together so that they're all helping you towards a singular thing? And it's not like every aspect is always going to help. Like, for example, it's not just about what helps, but also removing blockages. Like if an aspect of your shadow self is blocking your will, let's say an aspect of your shadow self is laziness. And if the aspect of your laziness is blocking your will from becoming a writer, because you never write, you just sit around watching Netflix all day. Integrating the shadow self doesn't necessarily mean using the shadow to help you become a writer, but remove the blockage of laziness that's blocking you from becoming a writer. And this isn't just about repression. Remember, integration is figuring out a way to deal with it. So it's acknowledging that, hey, you like to sit around and watch TV. Like you don't deny it, you acknowledge it, and then you make a deal with it. You figure out a way to please the shadow self, such as, you know what, I'm going to allow myself 45 minutes or an hour, whatever. I'm just pulling out a time. I don't know. 45 minutes every day for myself to watch TV. So you see, that's different than just repressed. Like, oh no, I'm just not going to watch TV ever. I'm not a lazy person. That's not me. Or, you don't have to use the word lazy if you don't want, whatever. You know what I mean? It's about acknowledging it, making a deal with it. This is why you're integrating it. And then so you're going to remove that blockage from your true will, from your true goal. So do you see, and this is your true self, your inner star starting to shine through as you become in control of your own mind and are directing all your faculties and functions towards your true will, your true purpose. Okay. So as far as like practical steps, there's not a one size fits all answer. You have to do the work yourself to figure out how to have all of these different aspects of yourself working together. It's not something I can, give you some examples, but just go back to what you have been doing in terms of your shadow self, your mirror self, and your power self, and then continuously doing that and thinking about how they can work together. And including your ego and your persona as well, how you present yourself and what you think of yourself, etc. All these things need to be working together. Okay, so now let's talk about an exercise. Because remember, we want our consciousness and unconscious working together on this process. The conscious aspect is literally what I just said, like consciously, it's like the element of air. You're consciously analyzing what, so it's like what we want is like air and water to be working together, essentially. Like how I said, we want the unconscious and consciousness working together. So we want air. Air represents intellect and consciousness. Water represents the unconscious and intuition. So the air aspect, the intellectual aspect, is literally analyzing it. Okay, what is my power self? What is my shadow self? What is my mirror self? What steps can I take to begin to integrate them into my life and harmonize them? It's a very intellectual, analytical aspect. That's the conscious aspect. The unconscious aspect is about engaging with the symbolism so that your unconscious mind begins to work with you in the background, helping you achieve those goals, giving you that psychic energy. Not psychic like reading the mind. Psychic just means of the psyche. The libido, the directedness of internal mental energy towards that. So that's why we use these symbols in alchemy, by the way. Like, all this symbolism here, this is think of this as a language that connects to your unconscious mind. We could easily talk about this stuff without the symbols, and that's exactly what I do in my book, Psychogenesis. I talk about these same processes, but without the symbols. And that is all about the conscious aspect. The symbolism we bring in to begin working with the unconscious. So in the background, your unconscious realizes what's going on and what's important and begins to push you and nudge you and help you in that direction rather than hinder you, because you're communicating with it what's important and what you're trying to do. So now you're having the unconscious and conscious working together. So the conscious aspect is exactly what I just said, analyzing. The unconscious aspect is beginning to work with the symbolism, and specifically what we can do, like I wrote about this again in Psychogenesis, and I'm going to read it to you, creating an inner star anchor. Okay, what you can do for the unconscious aspect of aligning unconsciousness with your consciousness is creating an inner star anchor. What is an inner star anchor? An inner star anchor is a physical reminder of your connection to the inner star. And it's a powerful step in inner star actualization. So what this means is about selecting an item. And this item is going to act as an anchor. And this is from NLP, or neuro-linguistic programming. This is psychology, by the way. This is psychology where you're going to make an unconscious link. You're going to make a link from your unconscious to something physical. Okay. Now, in terms of magic, you could call this a talisman, is what we're talking about here. We're basically talking about creating a talisman. But in terms of psychology, this is known as an anchor. So you see, when you understand what magic is, you understand it's just a process of psychology. Now, most people don't understand that. And then you go off the deep end and people are like, oh, if I create a talisman for getting rich, I'm going to make a ton of money. That's not how that works. You could create an anchor that reminds you of the fact that you want to be more successful, and that could help move you in directions towards accomplishing things in your life that will help move you towards that goal. But it's not just going to magically bring money to you. No, that's bullshit. This is all about psychology and understanding how to leverage the power of your mind to accomplish your true will. And so creating an inner star anchor is about creating an association with an object. Okay, so let's talk about this. How do you do this? Well, first you have to select your anchor, and this can be any wearable item that resonates with you and symbolizes your connection to your inner star. It could be a ring, a necklace, a bracelet, or any other item you feel a strong affinity with. The key is to select something that isn't just random, but rather something that reminds you of your connection to your inner star. Okay, so choose an item, ideally a wearable item that reminds you of your connection to your inner star, your true self, something that really resonates with you. And it doesn't have to be wearable. You could just, if you wanted to, it could be like something on a keychain or something that you put in your pocket. It could be a crystal. It could be anything that just resonates well with you, because you want it to mean something to you. You want it to have meaning to you. So just as an example, these are literally called inner star anchors, which has the Neogenian symbol on it. And so this is something that a lot of Neogenians use to be an inner star anchor. It doesn't have to be. You don't have to use this. You can use anything that you'd like, whatever resonates with you the most. But just as an example, this is an item. And so what do you do here? How does it work? So first you select an item. let's say that you're going to use this just for argument's sake. So let's say that you're using that. So what you need to then do is enter into a meditative state. In the Neogenian system, we call them void states, but you're essentially entering into a meditative state that's purposeful, a purposeful meditative state. So you're focusing inwards, you're quieting your mind, and you're beginning to access the unconscious through this meditative state. Now, you take some time to do a meditation, 10, 15 minutes, however long you want to do it. And towards the end of your session, what you want to do is take your anchor, whatever it is, whatever your chosen item is, and hold it in your hand. And as you hold it in your hand, what you need to do is vividly recall the feelings of power or divine connection or whatever you experience when you feel connected to the inner star. And so what I mean by that is, we didn't really talk about that, but that's important, is I'm sure a lot of you can remember times where you just feel really connected to your true self. Like there's just a feeling of, wow, I feel this connection to who I am. This just feels different. I feel very authentic and connected. It's about whenever you have that feeling, remembering what those feelings are like. And then when you're in that meditative state and holding your inner star anchor, bringing those feelings back, causing those feelings to come back. And if you haven't had those feelings yet, that's okay. The more that you begin to work on inner star actualization or this alchemical process and start to integrate different aspects of your unconscious, that will start to happen. You'll start to have moments of clarity and just a feeling that connect, feeling very genuine, feeling very like who you are. And so it's about tapping into that and bringing into consciousness those feelings while you hold that inner star anchor, and to really immerse yourself in those sensations, feeling your entire being as much as you can as you hold your inner star anchor. And you want to continue this for several minutes. And what you're doing is you're creating a psychological association between the anchor and your true self, your inner star. And so what you're doing is essentially programming the anchor to become a symbol of your connection to the inner star. Now, what you want to do is not just do this one time. For effective anchoring, you want to repeat this process daily for as long as necessary. Usually, a week to a month is fine. A week could be totally fine. If you, it's whatever you feel. Whenever you feel like it's enough. If you did it for a week and you feel like it's enough, great. If not, do 2 weeks, then 3 weeks, then a month. Well, anything more than a month, probably. I mean, if you can go as long as you want, but a week to a month is typical. And you're constantly reinforcing this connection to this object that you have chosen as your inner star. And so each session that you do will strengthen this association and deepen the connection between the anchor and your sense of power and unity with the inner star. And then so what do? Well, you want to wear it. Wear your anchor regularly. And this will serve as a reminder of your true nature and your journey towards inner star actualization. And whenever you feel like you want to remind yourself of that and reconnect to it, you can grasp it. And this can bring back those feelings that you've been associating with it. And it will help you align with your true self. If you feel out of sorts or misguided or just unclear, doing that will help remind you and align you with what is important to you. And again, this is psychology. This is known as creating an anchor. It's kind of like, it's very similar to the idea of, have you ever heard, let's say you went through something really traumatic, like a breakup. And during your breakup, a certain song was playing on the radio. Oh man, no one listens to the radio. Spotify, whatever. A song was playing on Spotify. Well, what happens then if, a week later you hear that song? That's going to make you feel that heartbreak that you felt during that song. Same thing can happen a year later, or 10 years later, or 20 years later, depending on how strong those emotions were. And so you forged a psychological link between those emotions and that song. That's essentially what you're doing here. You're forging a psychological link with your inner star to this object that serves as a physical catalyst or mechanism for connecting with that. And so does this mean this is automatically going to actualize your inner star? No, it doesn't. If I wanted to just sell you bullshit, I'd probably tell you that it does, because it's a lot easier and people like things that are easy. I'd make a video like, oh, how to connect to your inner self instantly with this one item that you can buy for, $29.99. Now, you can buy these, but you don't have to use them. I'm not saying like, oh, you have to use this. This is the special secret one imbued that I blessed no, none of that bullshit. You can use whatever you want. You can use whatever you want. And this is not going to magically make you actualize your inner star. It's going to help you align your unconscious drives with consciousness so you can be more effective when you begin to do the hard work of integration. So I want to make that very clear. A lot of what you see today in terms of like New Age or mysticism or magic or the occult, not all of it, but a lot of it, is they just try and sell you on the bullshit easy part, like it's going to magically make everything happen. No, it's just one aspect that helps you align. And it's important. It's not that they're not important. They're very, very important, very powerful, but there's a lot more to it than that. Okay. Here's another thing that you can do is naming your inner star, naming your true self, selecting a name for your true self, your inner star. Think about it. Your parents gave you a name, but now you are taking the step to choose your name. So let me read again from Psychogenesis. Choosing a name for your inner star can be a very empowering step. This, like creating an anchor, isn't a mandatory aspect. It's not something you have to do, but for many, it holds strong symbolic value. The act of naming your inner star is about giving a distinct identity to the most authentic and powerful version of yourself. It's like assigning a personal mantra that represents your true self. When it comes to selecting a name, it's crucial to allow the process to unfold naturally. This name should resonate deeply with your core being. It's not something to be rushed. As you progress in your journey of self-actualization and begin to feel more connected to your inner star, a name that feels right may spontaneously come to your mind. It might be inspired by a particular quality you admire, an archetype you resonate with, or even a concept that relates to your experiences. Now, one thing that I will say that I will, you might want to try to avoid is selecting a name that's already a symbolic archetype. You can if you want to, but I'll just give you a reason why you might want to try and avoid that. Let's say Jesus is the name. Well, the thing is that Jesus symbolically represents an archetype, and what that might cause your mind to gravitate towards is identifying with the archetype that Jesus represents. And remember, you want to identify with your true self, not some other archetypal drive. So, that'd be like just identifying with just your power self or just your mirror self or just your shadow self, which you don't want to do. You want to choose something that is authentic and individual to you. Now, if you really I'm not saying you can't, you can, especially if you, but just be aware that I would advise, my opinion is that one should choose something unique and authentic to them, not one that is already an archetypal symbol, because then you can become possessed by that archetype and identify with that archetype rather than your true self, rather than your higher self. And that's not good, because all these archetypal symbols are just aspects of you, not who you actually are. So anyway, this can be a very powerful tool. It's a reminder of your journey, your goals, and the divine being that you're becoming. It's a symbol of your commitment for growth and actualization. And whenever you feel disconnected or in need of guidance, recalling this name, and especially coupled with your inner star anchor, can help realign you. Now, here's another aspect that I want to talk about, and this is about do you want to share this name or not? Whether you choose to share the name of your inner star with others or keep it as private is up to you. This name is a representation of your unique path, your struggles, your strengths, your goals. And it's a reminder of the path that you're on and the power and the potential that lies within you. Okay, but let me talk a little bit about this aspect of, do you want to share? So you can share it with others, but it's up to you. There's a couple different options here. Either you can be totally open with it and share it with others, or you can keep it completely private just for yourself, or you can share it with just a select few people that you trust. So what are the pros and cons to this? Well, the reason why is that you might want to consider keeping it to yourself is because when you keep something to yourself, it just kind of gives it reverence. Like it's not something that you say all the time or that everyone knows. It's a special name. Now, this is where secrets come in that can be positive secrets, right? Like there's nothing wrong with it. Now, secrets can be used for manipulation in a lot of esoteric orders, which I would please be very cautious of, where they can be like, oh, we have these special secrets that you never get to know unless you get to the 8th degree of the Grand Master, blah, blah, blah. That's manipulative. But if you're choosing something to remain hidden because it means something to you and is personal to you, that's something completely different. So it can give it reverence. It can give it, a unique status. And also you have to be careful as well is if you do choose to tell others, guess what? People are assholes and they can make fun of you. They can be like, that's a stupid name. What's wrong with you? And this can cause you to have negative feelings associated with it. Not if you're a strong person and you don't give a fuck about that, then it doesn't matter. But I'm just, letting you know that this is, and this is why some people keep any of their practices hidden. It's not, I am very much for transparency, but if one is doing it for that purpose to keep it special, when it's not negatively affecting someone, if you were to keep it a secret, there's nothing wrong with that. You just don't want people's negative statements or comments can make you have a negative reaction, then that's when you would want to just keep it to yourself, or people that you feel very comfortable with and that would respect you and understand the gravity of what it is. So it's completely up to you. It's just a matter of what feels comfortable and what feels right to you. So remember here that this process of distillation is the process of actualizing your inner star. You want your consciousness and unconscious working together. The conscious aspect is the air aspect, the analytical aspect of understanding and integrating your shadow self, your mirror self, and your power self. It's the phase of becoming, transforming, letting that process happen. Not, just like, oh, I'm just going to let it. You have to be the catalyst for it to happen. You have to be the controller for it to happen, but making it happen. And then the unconscious aspect that aids in this is creating an inner star anchor and naming your inner star if you would like. Remember, none of these things are mandatory, but they can be helpful. And it's whatever is helpful. If naming it you like, but you don't like the anchor, then just do that. If you like the anchor, but not the naming aspect, then don't name it. Just use the anchor. This is all, none of this is set. When it comes to the unconscious aspect, remember, this is about subjective truth, not objective truth. So it's what resonates with you and what works for you. Objective truth is another story. When we're dealing with the nature of reality, then we use mathematics because 2 + 2 always equals 4. Symbolically, fire usually represents will, but guess what? It doesn't always. Jungian analysts use fire to represent intuition. It just depends what system you're working in and what symbols you've made for yourself and you've defined for yourself. Okay. So it's about, when it comes to the subjective unconscious aspect, it's about what works for you, not necessarily following some rigid, strict rule set. Okay. So this is the important part of distillation. To go over one more time here, this process here it's the process of becoming who you are, right? It's less about searching, more about becoming, refining, purifying, stripping away anything that's not really you, and integrating all the aspects of yourself so they're working together in harmony, all right? So that your inner star can shine. It's ruled by the moon, which relates to the unconscious and cycles and intuition. It's associated with silver, which is the most conductive metal, representing connection, and the most reflective metal, representing clarity. The element, of course, we're always working with in spirit, and it's symbolized by the star, the nakedness representing authenticity and truth, balance, and the higher self, connection to the higher self in the night. And then, of course, as this step is related to combining sulfur and mercury together, the mind with the will towards higher consciousness. So that is distillation. Next week, we get to the 7th and final step of inner alchemy, which is about coagulation. And this has to do with manifestation and bringing your will into reality. So we're going to be talking a lot about that next time. So as always, my friends, if you enjoy this, consider becoming a member, because you're going to get access to my downloads, my downloadable notes all about this. So if you want, quick, clear, concise notes that highlight all the important aspects of what we just talked about, I'm going to be making that available. There's already 9 of them available for the 9 previous episodes we've done on alchemy, and there's a lot more to come. And we're going to do more about Kabbalah and tarot cards and a lot of other stuff as well, all those tools to help you understand. So when you become a member, you get access to all that for free. If you just want to purchase them, you can as well. There's a link in the description where you can just buy the collection outright, but it's a much better deal to become a member. Anyway, check that out. Links in the description, as well as my book, Psychogenesis, is in the description as well. And follow me on Spotify. Thank you all so much for your support. I appreciate each and every one of you, and I hope that this has helped you in your journey to becoming your true self. A big shout out to everyone, especially Renaissance Fairy, Cassidy, Angela, DB, Nusalina, Dallas, Sacred Moth, and everyone else. Thank you very much.